Anyway, I originally was just going to do a Q&A with McGinnis about this, but then, having read the galley of the book, I felt it would be fairer if I talked to Jeff and talked to you
Yeah,
a
well,
little bit.
none of us have seen the galley, as far as I know. I haven't
Yeah.
seen it.
Yeah.
Tell me.
Well, I was down. I was down to see Jeff the other day.
Aha.
I talked to Jeff for a couple hours and took some pictures and all this kind of stuff. But I wanted to sort of bounce it off you too.
Sure. Well, don't keep me in suspense. Give me some sense of the book anyway.
Well,
It's a minimum fee I charge for consultation with you,
right.
Keeler.
You ain't gonna like it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Actually, I would probably say you're gonna hate it. Joe comes to, he says in the book several times that he knew that Jeffrey MacDonald had killed his wife and children, and he had come to that conclusion by the time that he told me in an interview that he had come to that conclusion by the time the jury went out and all that kind of stuff. So, and he digs up some things and he has some theories and so on and so forth. So I'll bounce all that stuff off you.
You tell all that to Jeff?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I told Jeff everything that he needed to know.
Okay, good.
I made an agreement with Joe, when Joe let me look at the book so I could answer him intelligent questions, I didn't, the agreement was sort of tacitly that I wasn't going to show it to anybody else, so I didn't show. I didn't show Jeffrey the book, but I told him enough about what was in it that he knows what's in it, and he got the same basic impression from talking to Mike Wallace. I'm sure you probably.
Oh yeah, that I knew about a while ago, but I didn't know anything more. Jeff has not seen the copy of the galleys yet.
No, he has not. I brought him a message from McGinnis, which was that McGinnis would probably have the actual book in hand by about the 10th of August, in which case he would then go ahead and send it down to Jeffrey. So Jeffrey will get it a little bit ahead of the rest of the world.
Okay, all right.
So in any case, let me just ask you a couple of quick things here. You first met McGinnis in Philadelphia, right?
Yes.
Now,
before the MacDonald case ever took place.
And he wrote about one of your clients who was accused of triple homicide.
That's right. There was another triple murder case.
Okay.
A boy by the name of Richard Noble.
How do you spell it?
Probable name, and in many ways has an extraordinary resemblance to Jeff MacDonald.
How do you spell his last name?
Noble.
N-O-B as in boy?
Yeah, Noble as in noble.
As in noble.
An ideal. And all of that.
What happened to him? He was convicted or what?
He was charged with triple first-degree murder,
right?
And he was acquitted of the murder charges and convicted of involuntary manslaughter and served 3 months in jail. The result of the incident was 3 people died.
Acquitted of first-degree murder and convicted of manslaughter.
Involuntary manslaughter.
Okay.
Misdemeanor manslaughter is what I call it.
Served 3. That was he burned down. What was he trying to burn down?
Fraternity house. He burned down a fraternity.
But what was it within the fraternity house that he was trying to burn down?
He was a student at a party.
Yeah.
And they played some kind of horrible game of igniting a Christmas tree and then trying to snuff it out with their hands.
Oh, I see.
And it got out of hand and it burned the whole. It was arson and felony murder because of it.
Yeah.
And they accused him of being a disgruntled student who was trying to get even with people, which was not true.
Okay.
And it was an accident, but he was charged with triple first-degree murder.
So he ended up serving only 3 months in prison.
That's right.
Jail.
And I met McGinnis because he was writing for the Philadelphia Inquirer at the time.
Okay.
And he did some pieces on the Noble case.
Okay. Now, why, at the outset, what year was that, by the way, Bernie? You know, the Noble case?
Yeah, let me just sort of take 1 minute. I think that would be 1977.
1977. Okay, so this was after your first involvement with the MacDonald case.
Oh, I beg 1967. I beg your pardon. I beg your pardon.
Okay,
good Lord, 1967. Yeah, right.
Okay. All right. Now, why is it that you were interested in having a book done on Jeffrey? Was it primarily for the?
I wasn't interested in having a book done. That was not, that I had an interest in having it done. But we discussed many ways in trying to help Jeff defray the costs of the enormous expense that he was involved. He's an ordinary human being up against the the total mass power of the federal government.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that both of us thought of this idea independently, that a book might be something appropriate.
Yeah.
And we had also, and it's hard to separate which came first, received a number of calls and letters and had a number of discussions with authors.
Yeah.
Probably at least a half a dozen people who on their own had become so fascinated with the story back in 1970 that they reached out to us and were seriously considering it and working on the idea. So all those things happened. When the case was discharged in 1970, Jeff had no desire to go forward with a book. He was not interested in publicity, aggrandizement, or anything else. He just wanted to try and rebuild his life at that point.
Yeah, right. I got the impression from Jeff he was reluctant to go along, and you periodically said to him, "Look, we really ought to do this thing because we need to get some money for the defense costs and so on and so forth." He seemed said he was kind of reluctant at most points.
I love this. I think that's true. That he was never seeking it. I want to tell my story to the world, but we considered it as one of those options periodically, as to when he began to face tremendous financial bills as a possibility. He turned it down. In 1970 and early 71, we received a number of contacts about a book, but he said no. Look, the case was over, and that was the end of it. He wanted to get on with his life. He was only starting with 74 and 75. The case began to reheat. Right. That he began to think seriously about that again.
Okay. Now, did you ever have a lady working for you by the name of Liz Friedman?
Elizabeth Friedman, yes.
Elizabeth Friedman. How's she spell her last name?
F-R-E-E-D-M-A-N.
Okay, and she's now in practice someplace in San Diego or something like that.
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Now, McGinnis told me during the course of my interview with him that although he didn't really become aware of MacDonald very much until the 79 period of time, he later remembered, or Nancy, his wife, his now wife, remembered that Liz Friedman contacted her back in 70 because they had gone to school together.
That's correct.
Okay, so that was during the period when you were still contemplating the need for a book before the charges were dismissed, right?
That's right. Elizabeth Friedman was a law clerk who was working with us on the defense of the case, and she sort of said one day, this ought to be the subject of a book or a story, and we're looking for defense support, but thinking it might have to go to court-martial and all the rest of that. Right. And she said that that's correct, that she knew Nancy, the then wife of Joe McGinnis. Well, she's the current wife of Joe McGinnis. Are you the current wife? Yeah. Okay. I've lost track of Joe's family situation. Okay. But she then made a contact, but neither one of us ever spoke with him. Okay. Okay. She made a contact with Nancy. I don't think ever did. Okay. I don't think Joe ever spoke to Liz Friedman either. Okay. No, I don't think. What was your first impression of Joe? I guess the first time you met him was during the Noble case. But what was your impression of Joe to begin with? It's really hard to search back, and I would tell you that, to give you an honest answer, my first impression it might be largely colored by my bitter disapproval of what he's done to Jeff MacDonald now. So I would be not. Okay. I don't think it'd be a candidate if I was. Okay. Now you had no objections to this whole idea. It was basically Joe's idea to live with you guys in Kappa Alpha, right? Yeah, I think so. Okay. I think so. How would you so you didn't really have any particular problem with that notion once you decided to go ahead and do the book and all that kind of stuff? Well, there were problems. Yeah, sure. I had concerns. There were needs of the defense team for privacy in terms of working in the case. There were personal needs to be free of scrutiny. Just people need to be able to let their hair down. Yeah. And I think that clearly was constantly a factor, and everybody's thinking the entire time they're feeling somewhat aware that here's the biographer here looking on, the guy who was going to make his own observations about everybody who scratched under their armpits and who their nose. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Now, how would you describe the nature of the agreement that you guys ultimately drew up? I guess there were probably two agreements. There was one concerning money and one concerning access and waivers of rights to sue and so on and so forth. What would you describe the nature of the agreement as being? It wasn't writing, of course. Yeah, but I'm not sure I know what you mean. Well, I mean, the nature of it. Okay, he was not
in other words, Jeffrey was not to have any editorial control over over this book. Ultimately, is that correct?
Well, that's not correct, and I don't agree with that. And as a matter of fact, I insisted that a provision be inserted that the book he agrees to permit Joe to do a book, provided it fairly presents the story of MacDonald's life.
Right.
It's a provision that they had not seen, and their lawyers scratched their heads and worried about. And my view is that that McGinnis was not free to go off on a tear of his own. He wanted to do that. He wasn't entitled to what we were about to give him.
Right.
He didn't need us to do a tear of his own. And by my view then, my intention then, it is now, not to control it, but to have the right to say, the contract is null and void, and you have no right to any of these things if you do an unfair book, in the sense that, we can't cavil with some judgments, but if the presentation is unfair. And I think that his book, from what I have heard of it, absolutely violates that, and it's going to be a long time before anybody's heard the end of the litigation is going to come out of this. At least if I had anything to say about it, it would.
But he seems to feel rather comfortable in the knowledge that he could say whatever the hell he wants about Jeffrey MacDonald in this book. And
that's the arrogance of somebody who is, one, not in jail, two, it isn't his life he's talking about,
right,
and three, he knows that he won't pay to defend it. The damn publisher will be stuck with the defense bill.
Yeah.
So it's very cavalier of him to take the position that he's confident. I would be too if it has no consequences to me. And as a matter of fact, I suspect that Joe McGinnis will revel in the idea of litigation. Unfortunately, litigation to correct something, to correct a mighty wrong, is likely to generate more publicity that will, bring curious buyers to the bookstores to buy his book.
Yeah. Well, do you think you're likely, given that? He said Jeffrey's in a big bind here. I said to him, Jeffrey, this is kind of a difficult situation for you to be in because, A, if this book makes a lot of money, ipso facto, you make a lot of money. But B, if it makes a lot of money, that means a lot of people are reading it, and I'm not sure you're going to want them to read what it has to say. So his response was he hopes it doesn't sell a copy. But so
that would not surprise me that Jeff would feel that way. That is the kind of human being he is.
Yeah.
And money was not what life is about for him.
Yeah.
And this thing is only because he is extraordinarily in debt. He is extraordinarily in debt to friends.
Right.
He's extraordinarily in debt to all of his lawyers, investigators, and other people.
Yeah.
And people have been wonderful because they believe in him and continue to believe in him. And that includes people who worked, in the case.
Yeah.
Never got what they were, agreed to receive.
Okay. But now you said you wanted this contract, this agreement to say this business about fairness, but did the ultimate piece of paper that was signed by all parties say that?
Oh, it did. No. It absolutely did. Unfortunately, I don't have a copy because I gave all of my files over to Brian O'Neill.
Oh, Brian has a copy of it.
Well,
presumably.
Sure, presumably. He took everything that I had.
Okay.
And with my permission. I gave him all the files to take whatever you want, and that's all gone.
Now, at one point, Jeff started sending tapes to Joe McGinnis because Joe McGinnis, this is when Jeff was first at Terminal Island, and then thereafter when he was out for 18 months. And Joe McGinnis would send him questions and say, could you cover this area of your life? And Jeff would send him tapes and so on and so forth.
Yes.
So did Jeffrey ever ask you whether you felt that was an advisable thing for him to do, or
no,
did you ever talk about it?
He was already doing it before I learned he was doing it.
How'd you feel about it?
I was not comfortable about that.
Yeah. Well, it ends up being a rather large portion of the book. There's sections of the book that are called The Voice of Jeffrey MacDonald. And the voice of Jeffrey MacDonald says an awful lot about Jeffrey MacDonald's sex life at incredible length and incredible detail.
What the hell's that got to do with the goddamn case?
I know.
What's it got to do with these screwed dogs? What difference does it make except it being peculiar?
Yeah.
But it doesn't, slaughter a family. Oh, God. I can't believe that McGinnis has really crawled on his belly now to write Jacqueline Suzanne.
Well, I don't think he's gone to that level, but he maintains that it's an important part of Jeffrey's personality. That's what his claim is. That's why he includes.
There's nothing about psychiatry, and he never talked to any psychiatrist who knew much more than he did about Jeffrey MacDonald.
Okay.
Anyway.
Well, all right. Now, the point is that a lot of this stuff, Jeffrey sort of pointed Joe in the direction. Like he told Jeffrey to talk to Marion. He told Joe to talk to Marion Stern. And the upshot of this is this story in here about how Jeffrey had Marion Stern out there, although he doesn't use Marion Stern's name in the book, how Jeffrey had Marion Stern out there in California with him and Marion Stern's son, Danny, and how Jeffrey twice threatened Danny's life and so on and so forth. And the other...
Is that supposed to be Jeff saying that?
Well, no, this is Marion Stern and Danny saying this about Jeff. And the other thing is this whole business about... The other thing is the whole business about Escatrole. Did Jeffrey tell you about that yet?
Yeah, what about it then?
Well, there was in these notes that he wrote for you folks back in '70. Those were among the things that he gave McGinnis access to in his apartment there, right after he went to TI. McGinnis found it, and later he has essentially developed a theory that Jeffrey was taking taking Escatrole, which is an amphetamine which can trip one over into psychosis, and his theory is that Jeffrey's personality is basically warped to begin with. That Jeffrey is what he calls a pathological narcissist. And he quotes a bunch of books and authors on that subject. And then, based on that, he said that the one element of pathological narcissism is a repressed rage against women, and that this Escatrole business, which can, according to McGinnis, trip anybody into psychosis if it comes in the right dosage, apparently did that for Jeffrey MacDonald, or that's what he postulates in here. And of course, that whole theory depended at the outset on Jeffrey MacDonald giving him access to this paper, just as the whole business about Marion Stern depended at the outset on Jeffrey MacDonald mentioning Marion Stern to McGinnis. Right. So it seems like Jeffrey is most of what Joe says about Jeffrey in this book that's derogatory or whatever, including the business about the lie detector test back in '70. All of that came to Joe essentially through Jeffrey. So Jeffrey is handing Joe his head on a platter here, and that's the part I don't understand. Joe says it's Jeffrey's self-destructive behavior coming out. How do you feel about Jeffrey having essentially cooperated to this large extent and given McGinnis all of these little bullets that he can turn around and fire at Jeffrey's head?
Jeffrey MacDonald is a marvelous man. And one of the qualities I consider marvelous about him is a kind of a boyish naivete that if you tell people the total truth,
right,
the bad things, the warts, as well as the big good things,
right,
they will recognize a wart does not distort the big good thing.
Yeah.
And the unfortunate thing is that a pig like McGinnis, who is really simply crawling through the slime and seeing what he could try and rout out of the mud,
right,
overlooks totally what the picture is, and then fabricates it. One of the major defects with McGinnis's pseudo theory about the Escatrole,
right,
is the fact that MacDonald and Colette MacDonald, their blood was taken and they were tested for drugs.
Well, he claims in the book that wouldn't have shown up in this Army test. He said he did some reporting that showed that they were not testing for that in the first instance.
They weren't testing for that. It would have amphetamines would have showed. That's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. That nobody's talking about.
Yeah.
Amphetamines would show in the kind of testing they did.
Okay. Now, so you don't think that this Escatrole theory...
Let me put it. He knows a little bit about pharmacology and about blood testing, as he does know about human beings.
So you don't put any... Well, you consider these theories to be essentially useless.
No. I mean, it's the kind of insane fabrication of someone trying to write a Jacqueline Suzanne novel. I mean, if you'd really go into pharmacology, if you really go in and looked at, the medical records, nobody would to take the amount of Escatrole to have any kind of reaction at all would have shown in the testing.
Yeah.
That taking a single tablet does not trigger. A single 10 milligram tablet would trigger, a buzz. It wouldn't do anything.
Yeah.
Talking about triggering a psychotic break here, and he's absolutely irresponsible in a degree that
Well, he claims it's 3 to 5 tablets that Jeffrey was taking per day. In the notes say 3 to 5 tablets, and of course it doesn't say per day in the notes. I guess.
That's right, but but the simple question is that on the days in question, if we didn't have the medical testing in the hospital to check for alcohol, the presence of drugs, they were looking for that.
Yeah.
Their theory from day one, Bob, was because that was formed by the CID investigators in the first few hours on their mislocated idea that the scene had been staged. when they are the ones who had ordered it, said that he must have been, either drinking or drugged, and they were checking for that. They suspected that this was some kind of family feud going on here.
Yeah.
It was not like it would never occur to us that this might be the incident. It very much was in the minds of everybody involved with that matter starting day one.
Yeah, yeah. Now, at one point in trial, there was a theory going around among those reporters who were not privy to the inside of the defense, as Joe was that Joe was going to do to Jeffrey MacDonald essentially what he did to Richard Milhouse Nixon, which was to live with him for a few months and then run one up his ass sideways, which is essentially what has turned out happening here.
It shows you how much reporters are smarter than other people are.
That's the question. That was my next question. Is that Jeffrey said when he read the Alaska book wasn't finished at the time of the trial. I guess he didn't read it till TI, but the Heroes book and the Selling of the President book. It occurs to me that one could, if one read those books before making the decision to go ahead with Joe McGinnis, draw the conclusion that maybe that was a danger that was in the offing. And how come you guys didn't do that?
Well,
I guess is the big question.
How come we didn't do what?
How come you didn't? Well, how come you guys did not, before you signed up with Joe McGinnis, realize that there was some possibility that this could happen if the Nixon book was the way it was, and if the Heroes book was the way it was?
Well, the Nixon book, we were familiar with the Nixon book,
right?
And everybody realized, however, that Richard Nixon wasn't treated badly because Joe McGinnis had been in the story. Richard Nixon's life and campaign invited that kind of treatment.
Yeah.
McGinnis just got a different perspective of how the gutter sniping went on.
Yeah.
The Alaska book, first of all, wasn't done.
Yeah.
At the time, and we never saw any of the drafts of it.
Right.
I will only tell you this: I was last month in Alaska. I was teaching lawyers trial techniques up there in Alaska. I presided at the state bar, and any number of lawyers came to tell me, probably 3, 4, because it knew my interest, my involvement in all this, that if McGinnis ever showed up in Alaska, in some places he would probably never make it out of town again. There are people who wanted to shoot him dead for having mangled them, and it's only because they're so far away and they don't really give a flying damn that nothing more happened in terms of. But let's put it this way. Joe McGinnis would not be welcome back there, and one has to wonder about a writer after a while. At every place he goes, nobody ever wants to see him again.
Yeah.
I mean, somehow, how can everybody is wrong except Joe McGinnis. Everybody is only McGinnis is the fair one in his own view. It seems to me that he has established his track record now as a purveyor of the destroying of the people's lives, and by his silly grin and his entreaties of friendship. The thing that got McGinnis into this book, I'm sure, was McGinnis calling up MacDonald while he was in Los Angeles.
Right, I know that.
That story. That and Jeff being sold a bill of goods by the con man Joe.
Well, he's a very sort of a likable guy. I mean, that's what Jeff says.
Depends on what you like him.
Well, but Jeff said he liked him right away. He thought he was very humorous.
But Jeff, that's the openness and the naivete. If a person acts like they like you and is friendly, why people should act like the way what they mean. It means that he's friendly, and he likes me, and he's a human being. It doesn't mean he's committed to write my story my way, but he's got to be nice to me because he seems like a nice person.
Yeah.
Genuinely believes that people are the way they are.
Right.
It's a great quality. It's why he's a hell of a lot nicer than some people that we know. He lacks cynicism, which so many doctors have. He lacks the kind of defensiveness that so many of us have. Because he wants to believe that this is a decent world, because that's the world he wants to live in.
Yeah. What kind of effect do you think this book is going to have on Jeff's mother?
Well, I'm fearful of that, really, Bob. Mrs. MacDonald is, in many ways, a sainted woman. She has been a wonderful human being. I think, just generally, I have a great admiration for her, great fondness for her, the human being. And she has borne an enormous pain for a very long time.
Right.
And I think for Joe McGinnis to do this to her son, who she knows much better than Joe McGinnis ever did, never will.
Right.
That it's going to hurt her, in a way which I can't even contemplate how bad it'll be.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Now, the other question, of course, is whether this book is likely to erode or significantly alter Jeff's support out there in the world among people who may read the book, friends or other people who are have been involved in giving him money or whatever. Do you think that's likely to have an effect on drying any of that support up?
I think this book is going to very badly hurt Jeff MacDonald.
Yeah.
In exactly the forms or how that will be, I can't speculate. I can only say there are people who will, because they can't talk to Jeff, they can't see Jeff, they can't sit down and talk with him about, they can't hear what Jeff has to say, sort of sit there and say, gee, maybe I didn't think about this.
Yeah.
And these are people who, who will, I think, will, in fact, probably have doubts about their feelings about Jeff, and that is probably the cruelest thing of all. I mean, McGinnis' own opinions are his own drivel. He can write whatever he wants. To have hurt MacDonald this way by making it a sex story, and to invent his fiction about amphetamines with absolutely no medical basis to it. It's just absolutely.
All right. Freddie Kassab at the moment is trying to get past a federal son of Sam law similar to the one that exists in New York State, so Jeffrey won't be able to get any of the profits from this book either.
Well, it wouldn't work anyway because it'd be ex post facto.
Oh, okay. It probably would.
You might tell him to stop now. He could save his energy because it wouldn't affect anything that happened before. Contracts, agreement, before.
Yeah. Okay. So there's no way he could probably stop Jeff's money no matter what he does.
Nope.
Joe says Jeff got about $70,000 as a result of the book. Do you know whether that's a ballpark figure? If that's correct?
Yeah, I think that is correct, and that the first half of it went to the defense fund at the beginning, and then the rest of it after Jeff was released from prison and before St. Mary's Hospital would allow him back onto the staff, he lived off of that. That was how he kept himself alive.
Okay.
That sounds about right.
Okay. Now, to put this is a little bit tender here, but I just wanted to ask you about it. What sort of caused the parting of the ways between you and Jeff? Was it this business of the closing argument, or where
You mean this business of the closing argument?
Well,
I'm not sure I know what that means.
Jeff was feeling that you went on much too long in a closing argument and didn't let Wade do his thing, and that as a result that hurt his chances of getting an acquittal. Was that a factor in it, or what?
I don't know whether that's a factor in it. I think basically only Jeff can answer the question about why he wanted to change counsel. But let me put it this way: that at a number of critical junctures over the years, I asked him, and most sincerely, to examine the question of who should represent him, whether I should go on representing him, but what was in his interest or not in his interest. And so that was done at all junctures, 70, 74, 75, 78, 79, and thereafter. That was, in my mind, a legitimate question a client in a terrible situation should do.
How do you feel? Do you guys still consult periodically, and he still asks you advice on things?
Yes, he writes to me regularly, asks my opinions. I hear from him. I've talked to him on the phone several times. Okay. I consider him to be somebody I am very, very fond of. Okay. And I suppose the last thing I can say to you is, Bob, there are very few cases that lawyers should try to figure out what really happened, because it's hard to know what really happened. You weren't there. Yeah. But perhaps this case is extraordinary in the sense that after 13 years and having lived every piece of it, and knowing as much as anybody knows about it, there is the slightest doubt, there's not the shadow of doubt, there isn't any doubt in my mind at all that Jeffrey MacDonald never murdered his family. That this case, in a sense, has become the American Dreyfus case. Dreyfus was convicted and sentenced not for anything he had done wrong, but because the public ministers of justice needed someone to sacrifice to solve a problem that France, at the beginning of the century, to solve France's losses in the war to the Germans.
Mm-hmm.
Same way here, the Justice Department, CID, needed to cover their own enormous embarrassment at a triple unsolved murder right in the middle of an armed camp with 100,000 soldiers. And this MacDonald is the victim of that kind of action by the government.
Do you have any feeling of having failed Jeff in any way, in terms of your representation of him at trial?
No. I don't.
You
really
did well, or did the best you could?
I think one, I know I did the best I could, and two, I think that I did well by him. I'll leave it to others who want to second guess to make any other comments they want. But I'll tell you this: that everybody sitting aside from a case can always tell a lawyer who didn't get the result that they wanted that you should have done it differently. Right. This case was very carefully planned. The strategy was carefully done. It was hampered enormously by the vindictiveness of Judge Dupree.
Yeah.
In a way, that the unfairness of this trial will be talked about as far as Judge Dupree's role in it, in the same way as the unfairness of the trial judge in the original Sacco Vanzetti trial. It will forever remain a major factor, how he denied us a chance for 9 years to see the physical evidence. Then a month before trial, he was threatening me with contempt of court because I called the government a liar.
Yeah.
Because I said, when the government said, well, they never asked us for the evidence before, don't give them now. And they actually literally said that, Bob.
Yeah. And
I said, they're lying, and here are 29 documents which says all that. They acknowledge, and he threatened to hold me in contempt for speaking that way to him.
Okay.
I mean, that's, my regret is that I didn't have some magic to replace that judge, but there was only one judge in that district, and that is something beyond which, neither I nor any other lawyer could rise.
Do you think Jeffrey's going to be out of prison in this century?
Yes, I am absolutely convinced, Bob, that not only out of the prison in the century, that he will be out of jail because the whole story is bubbling to the surface. The amount of wrong, the fact that this is clearly not a crime he committed, is reaching to the people who are really at the heart of it. At some point, I think that.
Well, except that the two biggest things that are going to happen in the next month or so to tell that story are going to be things that are going to hit Jeffrey right in the groin, which is Mike Wallace and the McGinnis.
Well, that's so much for the media.
Yeah.
That's I don't know what the Mike Wallace program is like. I don't know whether you've seen the preview of that or not.
No, I have not. They don't do that actually. But I'm assuming from what Jeffrey told me. Jeffrey said he was devastated by it, and he said it was a brutal interview. And I know Mike Wallace. I said to him, Jeffrey, I don't understand even why you would let Mike Wallace interview.
I don't know. Either do I.
Everybody in my.
Did not ask I would not, because Mike Wallace is a predator like McGinnis.
Well, that's what I didn't understand here. I think that you guys at some point or somewhere along the line, what to quote. I mean, if we were saying in the courtroom hall, Jesus Christ, we know what McGinnis is going to do to McDonald.
Right.
I mean, it occurs to me that you guys somebody ought to have thought that.
Okay, I would not follow the Mike Wallace thing and would not have agreed to it.
Yeah.
And I would not agree to it.
Okay. Because everybody in my industry, I said to him, Jeffrey, I would never be interviewed by Mike Wallace. But he said, of course, you're not.
Like me, what the hell, Tom, hell's his name? Our good friend from Philadelphia, Tom, late night interviews. Shit.
Oh, Tom Snyder?
Yeah, like him. He eventually went away because nobody would be interviewed by him.
Yeah.
So, except jerk off entertainment types where he has nothing to do but suck on their behinds.
Yeah. All right, but you
Yeah,
still.
for instance, we turned Tom Snyder down repeatedly.
Oh, you did?
To do McDonald. Yeah, we turned him because that was my advice. I said absolutely not.
Yeah.
But I wasn't consulting Mike Wallace story.
Okay. All right. But you still, after all these 13 years, as you said before, you feel that that you know exactly and know to an absolute certainty that Jeffrey MacDonald didn't do this thing.
To the extent that any human being who actually wasn't there can know.
Right.
I am absolutely persuaded by everything, by the evidence, or rather the total lack of real evidence,
right.
by all of the facts I know about Helena Stokely and everything about her and her friends, by all that I know of the government case, by all I know about the human being, because I saw him more than Joe McGinnis did, under more circumstances, over a longer period of time, and privy to all the things that titillated Joe McGinnis's gonad, and and my interest is not in titillation. My interest is in trying to find, the essence of what this man is about, because this could be his lawyer as long as I was, without wanting to know that for your own self, my own self. And I wanted to know it. I didn't start out that way. I don't care in the average case. And I did start out that way caring. But after a while, as it's so totally entwined with my own life for 13 years, at some point, as I have to look at myself, Bob, and understand my own life, I had to look at Jeff MacDonald and understand him too. It didn't become a major conscious effort to look at him. But at an early point, I began to realize I needed to understand the human being, because I needed to understand what I was up to and what I was committing myself to for so many years. And if I had discovered in the final analysis that he was in fact had done all these terrible things, I would have felt, well, I have had the experience of meeting one of the most brilliant psychopaths of our time, and I would have considered that to have been a fascinating experience. It doesn't degrade me. I don't feel like I'm a fool or I'm less smart than I think I am if I had concluded that he had done these crimes. My view was that I had to justify what I was doing. I didn't give a good damn at all. I believe that I had a fabulously fascinating case that made being a lawyer very worthwhile for a very long time to me. But the conclusion came the other way. The conclusion, and I believe in it as strongly today as from the first time I realized that's where I was going to, my own mind.
Okay, Bernie. Thanks a lot.
Bob, will you send me a copy of your piece, please? I would love it.
Would you give me your address? Is it still
Sure. At the university, it's 530 Golden Gate University, 536 Mission Street. San Francisco, 94105.
94105. Okay,
Bernie.
Bernie.
I'd like to add it to my collection if you don't mind, Bob.
Okay, I'll be glad to send it along. If you had one last thing, if you had Joe McGinnis in the room with you right now, what would you say to him?
I'd probably tell him you're beneath contempt. Even contempt. Okay. Crawl on your belly.
Okay, Bernie. Thanks a lot for
Bob, take good care. Good to talk. I hope we have something more pleasant next time this year, but I hope
it doesn't ever seem to work out that way, does it?
Good luck to you, Bob. We'll talk to you soon, I hope.
Take care. Bye-bye.